Are just so happy to partner with Kathy and SIS Productions this month. And Kathy's one of the co founders of SIS Productions. And not only is Kathy an amazing actor, but also a producer and a writer and a director and an educator and just a resource, and I think a Seattle treasure. So Kathy has had experience on both sides, whether it be applying for these opportunities and also working for an organization who helps individuals when seeking different artistic grants and other explorations in this field. So without further ado, I want to bring to everyone's attention Kathy Hsieh. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Deidre. That's a very gracious introduction. Kathy Hsieh, and I just want to give a visual description just in case anyone needs it. So I am an Asian American woman with long, dark, straight black hair. It's parted on the side with a little clip. I have a sleeveless dress on, and I don't even think you can see the color, but it's sort of a peachy color straps, and I have brown eyes, and I'm against a kind of cream colored background with a little bit of shadow from my cat stand on the side. Thank you so much for all being here today. I am calling in from Rainier Beach, and specifically where I'm at, it is the land of the Duwamish. And today I wanted to keep this a little bit more informal. It is being recorded, but I did confirm that it's being recorded in speaker view. So if you uh, are open to keeping your cameras on, especially when we get to the question answer session. I would love that, just because I'm a relational person and I'm a visual person and I love seeing faces. But I also want to give people space, because all of us have been, dealing with a lot the last year and a half. So if you don't feel comfortable having your camera on, totally understand. If you need to pop on and off camera at any time, that's great. I am also someone who actually loves the chat feature, which is why you'll actually see a Kathy in chat if you're looking at it in a view that's not speaker view. Um, uh, so uh, if because I do know I grew up being very shy and introverted, so lots of times public speaking was my biggest fear. So look where I am now, always doing public speaking. But that's why where the chat feature comes in handy, is sometimes it feels more comfortable to just post something there instead. And that way we can still hear your voice without you feeling like you have to go beyond what your comfort zone is. So what I would love to, I'm going to give a little really high level overview to begin with. And then what I would love is actually, if you have any questions at all, as just mentioned, feel free to pop them in chat. And Hsieh and Deidre will try to monitor that, because really in thinking about today, like, how do I tell artists like about applying for grants, when the reality is because of the last year and a half, everything about applying for grants has actually completely changed. And because we're about to go through another transition phase, there's actually nothing concrete in terms of the specifics of like, oh, you should apply for this grant or that grant, and this is when their deadlines are, and this is how you make a better case for whichever grant. All of that has changed. So I just want to be really transparent with that right off the bat. So I'm going to give you a high-level overview of some of the steps that you might want to take, but I would really like to center this on your questions, because this whole last year and a half has really kind of changed our entire arts and culture sector. So I'm actually as interested in finding out what questions you have about. I am guessing that most of you are here because you are in the arts or culture in some way, and that you're looking for ways that it can be a more sustainable career, and that grants is often a way that artists have been told is how you can help be able to have you be an artist. And that is true, and that is also, there are other ways. So that's kind of what I want to cover today. So I guess at the highest level, when you are, wherever region you are, because I know we're actually not just Seattle people here on this call, or even like the greater Seattle region, um, wherever you may be based, one of the first steps as an individual artist is, and thank you so much for posting a chat, it really helps me to kind of see what different people's backgrounds are and interests are. But no matter where your interests are in terms of the arts, whether you're a visual artist, a theater artist, an actor, designer, a literary artist, musician, the reality is that there are actually different ways to kind of approach it. And so the easiest way is to actually first look, and now that we have the magic of the internet and different search engines. I'm trying not to do any product placement, but there are different search engines that all of us can easily use, where you can type in almost any question and there will be resources that pop up. That is what I suggest as a first thing, and to type in the geography of where you're at. And simple searches like individual artist opportunities, artist grants, artist fellowships, artist residencies, anything, or type in your specific discipline, type in your specific role in that discipline. These are ways to automatically pull up a lot of things that might be more relevant to you individually. And that helps. But in your local region, what you want to look for is typing in arts funder or arts council to find out, is there an agency in your local area that actually has part of their mission serving the arts or individual artists. And that's a great place to start with, especially if they are part of the local government or a public agency, because they're going to be the most open and have the most support staff to be able to set up time with you to help answer your questions. They may already be offering regular workshops to help guide you through grants and opportunities that they have, as well as be able to share information with you about other resources in the region. And that will help your search immensely. The other great resource, if you are in the Seattle-King County area, is both the Seattle Library and the Seattle Public Libraries and the King County Libraries have fantastic resources for artists where you can actually set appointments with them. They offer regular free workshops on everything from writing grants to researching opportunities to even doing business consultations with you to help set up your website, to help set up your social media ways to engage and create greater visibility for you. I actually recently just found out and I actually have to research this a little bit more myself, but I actually found out that King County Libraries actually even has, or they did before COVID at least, they actually have grant writers who will even help support you in writing some of that for you. So I need to research that. I know that the Seattle Public Libraries has a whole division that is, it was geared to help really like small business owners and sole proprietors. So it's not specific to the arts, but I actually met with him again, just prior to COVID. But they actually offer an entire service where you can set up one-on-one consultations with them. And they would love to be able to support more individual artists, because we are all sole proprietors in that realm, to be able to help guide you through any questions that you have. And they really are a fantastic service that I think most artists have not tapped into and don't realize even exists. And so both of the library systems that we have here regionally. So you might also want to, if you're calling in from Portland or anywhere else in the States or even Canada, because I actually have done a lot of work in Canada, contact your local arts council and contact your local library system and find out what services and programs they might be able to offer you. And that is like a great place to start, because whatever advice they give will be more specific to your specific discipline and region than what I can give. So that's why I'm trying to just keep with the high level stuff. In terms of other ways to get funding, Sarah's going to be talking more specifically about like creating your artist statement, creating how to present yourself in applying for those opportunities. So I'm going to try to leave that those topics of conversation to her session that's coming up in exactly 2 weeks, same place and same time here in Zoom, but 2 weeks from now. So today I'm going to focus more on sort of the other stuff to consider outside of that, which is there may be other ways to fund your art. In addition to grants and fellowships and residencies. So grants are usually you have a project idea and you submit an application, it's reviewed, and they decide out of all the project ideas they got, which one they're going to fund. I will say that more and more funders like our office have moved to one that centers not a project, but the people. And so there are more and more funders where it's you applying where basically we want to fund individual human beings who want to do art. And so our focus with our individual artist grants are more about who are you as an artist? Like what speaks to you? Why do you do art? Why is art so important for you? And then to also talk about how do you want to grow in your artistic practice? And the reason why we've shifted to that is because we actually spent years actually meeting with individual artists, specifically people who represent the global majority, and also looking at intersections of gender, disability, to really center who has not been traditionally getting arts resources. And I'm looking at the room of people here, and I'm just going to be very transparent because I always am, and most of the people here are exactly the voices that we are centering in our process, because unfortunately, how structures work in this country, and not by ill intent. It was really designed to support who they knew. And the people who created the United States of America have a certain, fit into certain social categories that because of how they set things up to benefit all the people they knew, which were themselves, all of our systems and structures and everything has been set up to fit that. And it was not with the intention of like necessarily at that time of disbarring everybody else, but it was they didn't know everybody else because that was their blind spot. And so all the people in this room are people who were not necessarily in those rooms of creation. And so I guess what I'm saying is that a lot of more arts vendors like our Office of Arts and Culture in the city of Seattle, for Culture in King County is also working towards that. But I also know like the Regional Arts Council in Portland is also working towards this, and many other funders are trying to be more inclusive and be more anti-racist in our practice. And so part of that is really listening to the voices of people who have not traditionally gotten the bulk of the grants and funding, and really centering all the input you've given us. And some of that input has been specifically, how can we be more human-centered? How can we create processes of applying where it doesn't depend on the number of awards you've gotten, your education level, what connections you have, how many media reviews you have, because we all know that all the systems in our country are inequitable currently because they've only really centered a very small specific demographic and not everybody else. And so it's almost impossible for all the rest of us to be able to show as many reviews or awards or fellowships or grants as those who have had a lot more opportunities in that realm. And therefore it's always going to keep that disparity in place. And so it does take like us arts funders admitting that inequity and really making the change to change that. So all of that is to say that things are shifting, and that what Sarah's workshop is going to focus on, and partly what I want to focus on today as well, is really about knowing that you should really think about what your own personal strengths are and not feel like you have to pretend to be what the norm is to get grants, to not have you feel like you have to play a game or code switch or show up in a professional way that someone else's standards, that white supremacy culture standards have said this is how you need to be in order to get these grants. That what we need are more people who are willing to lean into what your individual strengths are, what makes you unique as an artist, what do you really love about doing art, and that's what's going to speak more strongly. And I actually think, as our grant funders are evolving, that's what's going, your individual voice, your individual humanity, what makes you stand out, because it's not the majority or the norm, whether you're a woman or a person who represents someone of the global majority, that's actually going to make you stand out more, and is actually going to be what's going to leverage you the ability to actually get more grants in this transition phase that our entire country is going through. So you have to start by believing in yourself first, and believing in what unique gifts that you have to offer our society, that our society has not had the opportunity to hear enough of. And it's you that is actually going to leverage the power of the grants, not writing in it a certain way or having to feel like you have to conform to some whatever's out there. And I will say that one of the steps that more funders are doing, even if they're not completely all at a place of, our office included, being fully transformationally anti-racist yet, is that at least some of the steps that many have started taking of having more diverse panelists reviewing the grants, having more diverse staff like myself working in the institutions, is we are looking for that uniqueness. We are looking for a more multicultural ability to fund more broadly and more deeply in more diverse communities than we ever have before. So trust in yourself is what I'm saying, and really just focus on, like I said, those two questions that we're asking. I'm hoping that more and more funders start to embrace, which is, why is art so important for you? Why are you an artist, and why do you feel it's so powerful to do art? And I can say that almost across the board with every artist, regardless of whether they're a white male artist, a white female artist, a Black female artist, a transgender artist of color, no matter what, just an artist with a disability, no matter what our identity is, 99% of the artists that I work with and speak to and engage with, that the thing that we all have in common is that most of us, especially doing this nonprofit theater arts, not going to necessarily like Hollywood, is we're doing it because we believe that art has the power to change lives, that we believe that art has the power to make a difference in opening up people's minds, in transforming our society, and that is why we do art. So if you can talk about why you got into the arts to do that, to make a difference, then that is what's going to speak more eloquently than how many awards you've gotten, how much media coverage you've gotten, how many audience members come to your performances or have read your books. That's the power of what I think will actually help funders see, wow, why have we not funded this artist before? What they're saying moves me, makes me want to fund you, makes me want to build a relationship with you and get to know you. And that's how you each individually in this room have the power to change arts funders' minds. And that's how we can work together collectively to change these really inequitable systems that make us artists feel like, I will be honest, like the way that grant philanthropy has always been, it makes us artists feel like we've always been begging at the door for money or begging for value of what we do. But no, we've always had value, and we've always had gifts that just need the opportunity to be shared. But we can transform that if we stand in our own truth and share that. And that, more than any other message I wanted to share today, that is the message. I do want to leave space for individual questions, but the other thing, so feel free to add those into chat, and I will just share some other highlights that I wanted to make sure people knew about, just in terms of my own journey. I started off with, I will be honest, in high school, hated writing papers. I hated writing papers with a passion. I hated writing papers. And I hated writing papers because we were taught to write papers in a certain way. What is your thesis? What is your supporting argument to demonstrate that your thesis is sound? And what is your conclusion? It felt so rigid and formal. I rebelled against it. And I was in the honors language arts class, and my teacher, who was also my drama teacher, by the way, he said, Kathy, you know, like, and it was a class specifically so that we could pass this test. And if we got a certain score, then it would actually help us in our college career. Um, and and he said, Kathy, but you know, like that's how that test is framed. So if you don't do it this way, you're not going to pass that test, and then you won't get the advantage of taking this class. And I said, but it's going against everything that I feel is who I am. So I actually did rebel. And so we were supposed to write all of our papers. We had to read plays and books and write our papers in a way that fit that norm. And the reason I'm sharing this is because that's often like what grants feel like to most of us, that we have to like say what we want to do, like our project, and then defend why this is important project to be done. And then that's how grant writing normally is. So in that language arts class, what I did instead was we read The Importance of Being Earnest. And so instead of writing my play with a thesis statement, 3 supporting paragraphs, and then a conclusion, I actually wrote my paper in the format of a play. I actually made it a witty dialogue that actually talked about the themes that Oscar Wilde was exploring in that play, and wrote it as a play. We then read like Crime and Punishment. And instead of writing it based on the way that I was told, I actually wrote my paper about Crime and Punishment from an internal psychological dreamscape, because if you've ever read that book, that a lot of it is in that realm. So I actually took whatever format that the author that we were exploring and wrote about what they were trying to explore, but in the same genre. So actually the one I did about what's his name? Whitman, Walt Whitman, who wrote in Stream of Consciousness. So my paper about his writings was done in Stream of Consciousness, and I share that story mostly so that I rebelled against the system, and what ended up happening, and I knew that I was basically I was going to use that 4-letter word. I was basically going to basically destroy my own chances of getting the 5 points on the placement test I was going for. But to be honest, I had fun. I was leaning into what I felt were my strengths, and I was really creative. And I really felt like I was like addressing what each author was trying to express in the style that author showed strength in and became famous for. And so anyway, we took the advanced placement test, and guess what? I ended up tying for the highest score that you can possibly get with that test. And it's because I was willing to stand up against the systems that were in place, and more than anything else, stand in my own truth and knowing what my strengths and talent and the way that my brain and the way that I work. And so there is a lot of risk with that. I knew I was taking that risk, and I know not everyone can afford that risk. So I always do also understand the full reality of where we all might be, that some of us might not feel like we can take that risk. So how I've translated into now normal in how we as people, as artists, especially creative-minded, imagination-filled people who long to just express our humanity through our art, how we are able to live in a society that is set on structures and systems to try to keep us like in these boxes of expectation and societal norms, how we can be like live within that and still be able to do our thing without feeling so restricted, is I like to explore the both and. So as an artist, I knew that like, okay, so grants are the norm. So I did start finally writing grants. And but I refused to let go of who I felt were my strengths and talk about like, how could I take the questions that they were asking me and lean into how I can use those questions to highlight who I was, even though sometimes the questions weren't actually designed for a woman of color. They were designed for, I'll be honest, a white man to compete in. Um, and I also realized that, you know what, because I don't like writing grants, I actually started exploring different ways. Like, okay, if my main aspiration is I want to do my art, and when I started in this career, I'm a theater artist. I started as an actor in between gigs, which lots of times there are lots of in between gigs, or lots of times I was getting a lot of gigs that were paying next to nothing. Um, I was basically working part-time in basically like a lunch counter restaurant, and then working part-time in a movie theater. So I was making very, very little money. And so the way I was able to sustain myself, because that's really, I think, what you're all here for, is how can I do my art in a way that is genuine to me and be able to sort of make a living doing it. I worked at the restaurant partly so I could feed myself. That was how I fed myself, was working at the restaurant. I worked at the movie theater because I loved watching movies, and that way I could watch movies for free. So I chose two specific part-time jobs that allowed me to be able to do things that I actually enjoyed while making money so I could sustain myself in my art. And then I realized, like, I actually did a self-assessment. I actually do self-retreats with myself every year. And this last year I actually ended up doing like 4 retreats, like every few months. And I think that's an important skill. And I actually do a whole different workshop, or I used to, I haven't done it in a while. I used to do a whole different workshop that really kind of gave like a 5-step process of finding yourself and how to do a self-retreat with yourself. So maybe in the future, I can offer that again. But part of that self-retreat was really like putting out there, what is my specific goal and how can I get there? And so my specific goal is I want to be able to be a theater artist. And so sometimes the normal way was like, okay, write grants, like get hired doing theater, do the teaching artist thing. And for me, that didn't quite work for me. I didn't feel completely happy doing those things. Because I tried it and I realized I wasn't happy doing those things. So I really thought with myself and thought, what makes me happy? I know this is going to sound weird, but I actually am a very creative person, but I also love things that are like I could get my hands around. So I also love numbers. I love spreadsheets. I love bookkeeping. I love doing my own budget. That was the part that I actually love. A lot of other artists, it might be some completely different. So many theater artists in our region are carpenters. They love working with their hands, and they actually make a lot of money doing carpentry. So I can name like dozens and dozens of people here in the Seattle area who are theater artists and they are carpenters and doing that work because both of those things bring them joy. So that's what I'm suggesting. For me, it was actually, I love spreadsheets and numbers and planning. So I realized like, I actually found more joy in doing bookkeeping for people, to helping people do their income taxes and making money doing that. And that's what actually helped me be able to pay for me being able to produce my own theater shows. That works for me. For each of you, it might be something different. So many of the artists I know do love being a teaching artist, working with kids, and they find great joy in that. So they're able to support their artist career by doing that and both and. Someone else, I know people. I have a friend who I first started out doing theater with, and she realized that she loved like all the things that are basically what a lawyer does. So she actually went to grad school or went to law school. We actually created SIS Productions together, and she went to law school a few years into the creation of SIS Productions, got a law degree, and that is what she is doing as well. And she has actually discovered that she actually loves law even more than theater, so she's now been doing law more. But she still continued to work at Book It and a lot of other theaters as a lawyer. I actually have several friends who ended up being lawyers because they loved fighting for justice and for rights of people, using their voice. And it's very aligned to being a theater artist, but in a different format. And so here's the thing, is like, you can also support your art by leaning into the other things. We're not like, singular individuals. We all have different interests. There are a lot of artists, and I love how some of the theater companies like ACT has been supporting artists in this way. Um, I think Seattle Shakespeare also started doing this as well, where artists do, like, there's a lot of artists who do crafts, sell jewelry. Shanice, who does a lot of musical theater. I mean, she works really steadily in theater in town. She's also an amazing artist and creates jewelry and all of these different things. And so it's a different way of supporting herself that also enriches herself and broadens where she's able to support her artistry in different ways. So it is about, like, really thinking deeply about who you are as a human being and what are the other things that bring you joy, and can you also make money doing some of those things, because I will tell you, like, the arts, unfortunately, in this country are the least valued of all the different industries. And unfortunately, because of that, no matter how much value we each, and I truly believe that artists bring more value to our entire society than any other sector. But ironically, we are the least valued in terms of this capitalistic society, in terms of money resource. And so sometimes then, in order to live in this society, we need to find those other things that we also enjoy and have a passion for and bring us happiness, and allow us to bloom and grow, where they do are more valued by our society in terms of our capitalistic structures of finance and resourcing. That is something that I really do encourage all of you to think about as another possibility. If you find out you hate writing grants, I also know a lot of artists who they started writing grants because they had to, and they realized, like, oh my gosh, I love writing grants. And so they have actually now, to support their arts practice, they actually get paid doing contract work, writing grants for other people, because they discovered that was their talent. They were literary artists or other type of artists who discovered that. I know a lot of stage managers who realized that their organizational skills actually allowed them to be great executive assistants for rich, wealthy people, and were able to luck into positions that way. And so again, it's about tapping what are our broader talents than just the art form that we're doing. Have any questions come in? Does anyone have a question they want to ask? I want to make sure.
We don't have any questions that have come in yet, but I just want to encourage folks that we have a couple more minutes of the recorded time, and then we'll take the recording and turn it off. So, but feel free to send those in. And I don't know, Kathy, some of the stuff you're talking about actually is reminding me of also the need for us artists to be our advocates and to ask the government to, like, hey, yo, pay attention. We could use some more support. We have value. And really the work that Inspire Washington's doing,
Yes.
And the Inspiration League. And this is something that I wasn't really familiar with until recently. And so I just wanted to share it with y'all about Inspire Washington, which is essentially the Inspiration League. We can all join it, and it's kind of like the grassroots artist initiative, and they support science, they support heritage, cultural connections, to say, like, hey, how can you actually be lobbyists for your own industry? And asking us to, like, and helping us to coordinate and focus on, like, hey, this bill's about to be passed, or hey, this funding's about to be voted on. Let's all show up here and make sure our activism is known and we can advocate for ourselves. So just to put that resource out there, because it's something I'm learning more about, and what you're saying, Kathy, is really inspiring me and reminding me of this as well.
Thank you. I mean, one of the things that I want to share 2 quick stories in the time we have left before question and answer formal time. One is that at the city of Seattle, that's one of the things that we have been doing, and that's actually why I got hired in the job I got hired into, because our office actually decided to do a new initiative, and it was actually council driven originally, which was how that maybe the best people to actually work in these offices are artists, and because we understand what it's like to be on the other side. So as public agency, where all of us view ourselves as public servants, we can better serve the public if it's the people that we're trying to serve that are represented as staff in the office. And I encourage, you know, any arts funder to do that more. And as a part of that, actually at city government, our office really then started working on how do we actually bring artists in residence in other city departments. We created an artist residency position in the Office of Department of Transportation. We have an artist who is shared between the Office for Civil Rights and our office. We have artists who are actually working, like I said, in this shared way, Department of Planning and Development, in other departments, because we realize that that creative the creativeness of artists, and the fact that a lot of artists, we are using our art form to explore big questions of society, how to address problems, and using the art to open up people's minds so that we can all explore these ideas together. And that is exactly what we need in all these city departments who are grappling with huge issues like the environment, with race and social justice, with traffic issues, is the creativity of artists. So more and more of that is starting to happen, not only in our city, but elsewhere. We actually hired Sarah to do that with our office for her skill set in that as well. So know that that is happening. With SIS Productions, I did want to highlight that the whole reason why I and 3 other Asian American women started SIS Productions is because we all worked in theater, and we knew that, and this was 21 years ago. I was like, we're legal, but we're 21 years ago. 21 years ago in 2000, we started SIS Productions, and we started because we were all working in theater, and we knew that the way that theater set up as a top-down hierarchical, male-centered, very white-centered system structure, which was actually built on, like, our current nonprofit theater model is actually partly framed on corporate model, which we all know is also very inequitable. It was not working for us. It's not working for our health and well-being, and we wanted a different structure. So we created SIS Productions and called it SIS Productions because we wanted to create a different way. So we looked at all those systems and structures that were not healthy and decided, like, we needed to center our leadership in our collective, no top down, like only one of us being on top, but all of us equally sharing in decision making. We wanted to make sure that where artists would actually read all the scripts that were in consideration or suggest scripts that they had, and we would all read them together and then talk about them, and then we would all vote so that we could decide what shows we would do. Our original show was a series of to really kind of where we all created it together. We didn't actually originally have one playwright or one voice in it. We were all co-creators on it, and then we did realize that for that it was easier for Sarah to one playwright to write the scripts, but all of us co-created our characters. We really tried to make things in a very different model to try to test and experiment. But in fact, the whole reason we started SIS was really to test and explore a new paradigm for how to do theater in a way that centers the well-being of people, rather than the end product of needing to meet a certain bottom line. And we also centered the audience in that process. We let the audience, Sung actually is one of the audience members, our original fans, where we actually, during the middle of our shows, invited audience up on stage to, like, be in the show with us and improvise it with us, and they would respond very vocally and verbally, and we loved that. We had a very diverse audience, and they would shout things to the characters, and so then we would listen to their voice and actually ask them questions about where they saw the storyline going, and then we would actually center that. And so the reason why I want to share these 2 stories is because I do think that especially what we've seen this last year, a lot of the change that needs to happen is to challenge the status quo, and to really lean into what all of we as artists already do so naturally and organically. Okay, so I think we're right at
Oh my
8:15.
gosh, Kathy. We are. I'm just going to stop the recording, everyone. Thank you. For those viewing this via recording, I feel like Kathy has just really encompassed what Jess and I set out to do when creating Next Stage is really empowering the artist to have agency and to lead with yourself and know that you are enough. If what anything we're doing, if you can take that away and I feel like that would make my heart feel good.